welcome to Artemis, Oracle and Tarot, a sacred space for healing for those on the moonlit path. Here we hold space for complexity, the unseen and the in-between. In today's reading, you'll see cards that I designed myself, and they feature divine masculine archetypes to assist with healing and introspection. We all have a relationship to masculinity, regardless of our gender identity, gender expression, or sexuality. So if you've arrived here, know that there's a space for you, that you're welcome, and that you're exactly where you need to be. With that said, let's jump into your reading for this month. Hi Aries, welcome to your reading for December 2025. I hope that you've been well since we last connected. Without further delay, let's jump right into your reading. Couple of changes this month. I'll be doing a brief energetic reading, which I completed before pulling any cards just before now. So I found that this is a really nice way of kind of settling into your energy and getting some insights through some creative free association. So I'll take you through that in just a moment. And then the spread that we'll be using for the month is a different take on quite a traditional tarot spread. So I'll explain a little bit more about that one when we get to it. So without further ado, let's jump into your energetic reading. So yeah, I kind of started doing this more recently with some of the other zodiac readings, and I've just found it a really effective way of connecting with you. So if you're familiar with free association, I guess it's a little bit like brainstorming, but you just kind of let the things pop into your head and then you kind of see how they build. So as it worked out with you for this month, I started by writing Aries in the center in some kind of fiery looking letters. And then I also drew your symbol down the bottom here. And the first thing that jumped out at me was these four letters here, the R-I-E-S, which, immediately I rearranged as rise in my mind. So, rise above, transcendence. I think that these will be significant for you this month in December. And also what jumped out was these first two letters R, which I, embellished slightly by making A-R-E, so R, which I think for Aries is quite a significant word given how concerned Aries is with identity and emergence. And so I think, that will also be something that probably plays out in the reading today. I should mention that I had a look at the transits and I noted that in the middle of the month, Mars will move into Capricorn, which is the exalted sign for you, for Aries. And in this energy, Mars in Capricorn has, the potential to be really focused and decisive, which is excellent for getting things done, strategizing, finding the energy to perhaps deal with things that have felt complex or challenging. You should find that you have the energy to kind of lean into that. But if you don't find a place to deliberately place that energy, on the watch out for, that energy becoming forceful or impatient. It can kind of manifest as a sort of like a take no prisoners energy. So just be mindful of that. And that was interesting as well, because the next part of the letters that jumped out at me was like this IE piece. And if you notice, the A, R, and S are all in caps. And then these two letters are just in lowercase. And I didn't do that intentionally. But IE jumped out to me as sort of IE, which is, I full stop, E full stop, which is, when we extrapolate on an idea or a concept, and it's about precision, it's about being clear, and that seems really in line with this Mars in Capricorn kind of energy. And then the last bit that jumped out at me was these two letters here, the RI, which is Ri, which is a Japanese letter from their hiragana. And Ri has kind of connotations to, I guess, from an etymology perspective, to like logic and reason and also connection. But then from a more symbolic perspective, you know, when we learn Japanese in Australia, we associate ri with reeds, like river reeds, and these are known for their movement, for growth, and for, you know, bending rather than breaking. And I think that that's kind of what's being asked of you in this month when you move into that earth energy of Capricorn. Although you know, your planet is in exaltation in that sign, it is earth energy, and earth energy can be tricky for the fire sign. Too much earth can douse it, it can you know, put it out. So I think what's ultimately being asked of you this month is to understand how you can integrate, you know, specks of that earthiness into your flame in such a way that it doesn't diminish it in any way, shape or form, but rather it turns it into something else that's, you know, has the best of both kind of qualities wrapped up in it. So that's your energetic reading for December. I haven't pulled any cards for you yet. I'm open to whatever emerges, but I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up for you. All right, let's jump into that. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into the Oracle and Tarot reading portion of the reading. And as I mentioned, I'll be doing a slightly different reading with you this month using another spread, which is the Celtic Cross spread. So anyone who has had a tarot reading before or is familiar with tarot, you're probably familiar with this type of spread. It's probably the most commonly used and commonly known, even to those outside of you know, an interest in tarot. That's how prevalent it is. I'm not doing the full Celtic Cross today. I'm just doing the simplified one, and with a slight twist in that it's an integrated spread today. So by integrated, I mean it features both Oracle and Tarot cards, with the two center cards being Oracle cards, which really kind of set the theme and the overall, I guess, energy for the reading. And then the Tarot cards that surround help to kind of extrapolate the, I guess, the more narrative parts of the story, the nuts and bolts of it that help to contextualize the themes. So this does take me a little bit longer to set up this reading. So if you bear with me, I'll get that all set up for you. It'll only, you know, be like 2 seconds for you, but it'll take me about 5 minutes to get that all set up. So I will be right back. All right, and we're back. So let's see what each of the cards in positions means, and then once we've gone through the spread, I will do each of the card reveals and give you an interpretation on what's happening for you in December. So in the center of the Celtic Cross, underneath in the vertical kind of position is the current situation, and directly overlaid it is, I guess, the intermediary energy, which can be either challenging or supporting. It really depends on what card's sitting there and also what position it's sitting in terms of whether it's reversed or upright. And then we move to the tarot cards. So beneath here, we've got the foundations to the situation, which kind of represents, I guess, energy that you may be aware of or unaware of that's kind of feeding into the overall theme of the situation. And it generally represents in some way, you know, something that needs to be overcome, addressed, integrated in order to kind of individuate and kind of, yeah, sort of process and bring that kind of aspect of your identity into alignment with the rest of your ego. Over here on the left, we have the recent past. And so this kind of from a timeline perspective, represents sort of the energy that's been kind of leading into this current situation. So it may feel very familiar. It may feel particularly kind of recent or prescient. Up here in the top, we have the likely outcome. And the way that I kind of use tarot as a symbolic kind of narrative tool for introspection, I don't necessarily believe in kind of fated outcomes. I sort of see this likely outcome as almost as if the cards are saying, look, if nothing changes, this is what's likely to happen. But this is why we use tarot and other tools for introspection. It's to identify what's going on in our inner kind of system, and then, make changes necessary on the inside so that on the outside, the reality that is reflected back to us is that which is in alignment with our inner cosmology. And then over here on the right, we have kind of the immediate future. So that's, again, this timeline through the center, like what's likely to, flow out immediately from this current situation. So that's how the simple Celtic cross spread works. Without further delay, let's jump right in and see what the cards have to say for you. So I always uncover these two center cards at first. And in the current situation, you have pulled the Raphael card. And the Raphael card speaks to natural healing, restoration, and emotional renewal. So this kind of is what we would, I guess, call sacred rest. It's kind of very much Four of Swords energy. It's very much the Hanged Man energy. It's when we take time away from the everyday pressures and bustle of our lives and spend time tending to ourselves and our core needs, and also addressing, unresolved thoughts, worries, concerns, that kind of thing. So the fact that it's upright says to me, Aries, that you've potentially been opening up to and engaging to this process, and that even though it may have been challenging going at times, that ultimately you're definitely feeling the benefits and the momentum. It's adding air to your fire rather than suffocating it. And I think that that's a really good sign, because I feel like this work doesn't always come intuitively to you. So kudos to you for, really leaning into that. I think that's really significant. Now, in the challenge or support intermediary kind of energy, you've pulled Pollux and Castor here. And Pollux and Castor, they're the Greek myth behind the Gemini twins, and they represent sibling bonds, mirror introspection, and trust. And so I think as it relates to kind of Raphael here, it's suggesting that there's a dual element to your healing and restoration that needs to be addressed, or has kind of raised itself to your attention. And even if you're a single child, we still have that kind of sibling energy that sits like within our inner system. You might even view your shadow self as your kind of sibling that you need to kind of build trust with and learn to understand and appreciate, rather than to kind of repress or hide or feel guilt or shame over. And so that's kind of the next level of your healing here I'm getting, is that there's this calling to, really leaning into the shadow work and finding ways of expressing, those kind of aspects of our shadows that aren't necessarily socially embraced, and yet without acknowledging those impulses, those drives, indeed those ideas, we leave them unacknowledged and repressed within the shadow. And so it's about finding the creative and spiritual release of those energies in such a way that's not destructive, but rather recognizes the depths of creativity and powerful, impulse that exists within us, and not being ashamed of that, but actually rather recognizing it for what it does bring. What we might do is jump into the rest of the reading and see if that helps to further extrapolate that. So looking down here at the foundation, I can see that you've pulled the sun here in reverse. And in the tarot, the sun speaks to kind of like mental clarity. It speaks to abundance. It speaks to having and enjoying the wealth of all that the sun kind of nurtures and helps grow. And with it in reverse here, it suggests to me that for whatever reason, you feel cut off from this, or you feel stunted from this, or indeed it feels that perhaps there's an element of it that doesn't sit kind of right with you. And I think that's potentially because, looking at Pollux and Castor, maybe there's an aspect of your shadow identity or shadow self that represents qualities of the sun that can be challenging. This might be a harsh inner critic. This might be a kind of interrogative type of mind or questioning that can come across as really harsh and abrasive, because it needs to know, and because you recognize that that energy can dissuade people or it can put them off. You've had a tendency to completely back away from following that impulse. And so I think what I see here is that there's some work that's required in terms of looking at that the shadow aspects and ascertaining like what parts of them were you kind of conditioned to believe are socially acceptable or unacceptable, and what parts do you actually kind of truly not resonate with, if that makes sense. And if there are aspects that you were kind of just told, oh, you shouldn't ask questions, or you shouldn't be so demanding, it's up to you actually to determine whether or not that is a trait that you kind of appreciate, because for a whole range of different circumstances, we're often told as children, don't do this, don't be like that, that brings shame onto the family. Whatever the case may be, you need to use your discernment to come to that conclusion. But it's about addressing these core beliefs that become unproductive and indeed limiting in adulthood. And for you, Aries, I think it has something to do with this sun energy. All right, let's move over to the recent past here. Yeah, you've pulled the King of Cups in the recent past. And the King of Cups is a sovereign, kind of balanced leader who leads from empathy, who leads from creativity, is deeply in touch with his unconscious and creativity, and that's his strength. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's very intuitive and in touch with the needs of others, and sometimes this can be at a I guess he can put the needs of others before the needs of himself. That's typically more with the reverse meaning of the card, though. So it's intriguing here to see the King of Cups in the upright position, which kind of suggests to me that there's a positive association with this water energy rather than a negative one. And I wonder if that's like the influence of another person in your life who that water energy you've actually found to a degree has helped, even your temper, regulate your moods, or even just like to develop an appreciation for your own creativity and, I guess, more receptive qualities. Perhaps even to the point where you now kind of lead with those, and maybe that's what's going on here, is that you've developed almost these antithetical qualities that are unusual for Aries, and the more traditional sort of fiery ones have been put aside, or you've told yourself that they only ever cause trouble, or they only ever make situations more challenging for you. And if that is the case, I'd encourage you to really interrogate that belief, because whenever we contain the capacity for multitudes, and we're never just one thing or never just one set of skills. We have all of the elements of the tarot within our inner cosmology, and that means finding the right balance of them all. So I think it's about reconnecting with your fire energy. And if I think about like the rise and the who are from your energetic reading, I really feel that that's starting to come through strongly now. It's you, Aries, like asking yourself, like, who am I? And what are the qualities that I embody when I'm at my best? And how can I stay, authentic and true to those? All right, in the likely outcome, you've pulled the Three of Swords here in the reverse position. And the Three of Swords reversed typically kind of indicates that there's a coming to a close of a period of grief or heartache, or like emotional heaviness that's been weighing on your thoughts. Do you know what I mean? Like, this isn't necessarily the emotion of grief or the emotion of heartache, but rather it's being unable to escape the story of those things. Perhaps it's been a breakup that you've gone through, or perhaps even the loss of a loved one. It could be that you left employment, or that you lost a job and you can't stop thinking about it. Any of those sorts of things, but you've become almost like fixated on the rumination rather than kind of actually still being in your emotions about it. You're actually more in your head about it, if that makes any sense. And this is like classic reverse sun kind of energies, when we turn that spotlight inwards, and the light of the sun, like through a magnifying glass, like if you concentrate it, it burns, right? It becomes interrogative, it becomes all-consuming, and it's the opposite of the kind of the King of Cups energy. So I think here it might be that because on the external facing, you've pulled back from utilizing those fire energies, that with no other outlet, it's kind of reversing back on yourself. And so you're overly self-critical and under externally kind of discerning. and that's kind of what's causing the imbalance. And I think with Mars moving into your Capricorn, you're kind of astrologically becoming really well placed to find that middle ground. And what I would suggest is from the 15th onwards, like journaling about how you're feeling, your state of mind, the things that you're doing when you're feeling at your best, because those will be helpful markers for you to slip back into this energy, moving forward when, Mars moves out of Capricorn, which it will, that you have those kind of like almost like embodied sensational kind of imprints on how to jump back into the energy. Okay, moving over to the immediate future, you've pulled the Five of Pentacles here also in the reverse. And this is pretty profound, like immediately following, the Three of Swords in reverse, the Five of Pentacles speaks to feeling frozen out or feeling out in the cold on one's own. And, it's an illusory kind of feeling rather than an actual realistic picture of the reality. Whenever we struggle, we should feel that the fire or the lights are on somewhere with someone who we can turn to in order to share, commiserate, cry with, whatever the case may be, whatever the support might be that you're looking for. It's out there for you. You just need to remember that it's not weakness to turn to a friend, a loved one, a colleague for support. It's our vulnerability in these moments and how we show up for ourselves that determines, our strength, not whether or not we can suffer through, immensely difficult circumstances on our own. And I think Aries, with your independence and your willpower, you often will kind of feel the need to solve things solo. And yeah, I think that today's reading really just serves as a reminder for you that, you can also be someone who turns to others for connection and for support, because, that's why we're all here together on this spinning rock of dirt, hurtling around space, orbiting a big fiery ball of helium and hydrogen. Well, that's all I've got for you this month, and thanks again for watching. If you'd like to learn more about the divine masculine archetypes that featured in today's reading, including reading their full profiles, booking a private session with me, you can do all of that by heading over to my website, which you can find in the video description below. Some insights take longer than others to emerge, so make sure that you give yourself time and space for this to occur, and simply leave behind what doesn't resonate. Please drop a comment below with any parts that did resonate. I love hearing from you in terms of what resonated. Don't forget to like and subscribe here on YouTube so that you don't miss your next reading. And you can also follow me on Instagram if you'd like to. The link for that is in the video description below. You might also consider checking your moon and rising and Venus signs for additional insights. Until next time, allow the moonlight to reveal your way and trust that you're on the right path. I'll see you in the next one. You've been watching Artemis, Oracle and Tarot, a sacred space for healing for those on the moonlit path. Join us here on YouTube for monthly tarot readings by astrology sign and deep dives into the imagery and symbolism used in the making of our unique Artemis Oracle and Tarot decks. If having a space to work through the unpleasant but necessary parts of adulting sounds good to you, like and subscribe here on YouTube and follow us on Instagram so you never miss a beat. All links are in the description below.